Hello everyone, welcome to Roma Theory. It's basically the start of a new week in a few hours, and it's a week with no football, it's a week with no Roma, and it's a week where a lot of our players are going on international tours with their with their national teams. There are going to be a few players which are going to stay behind. Dybala is one of them. Awar is another one of them who basically had to reject the call up from Algeria because of his little injury. And yeah, so we've got a mixture of players which are going to leave and a mixture of players which are going to stay. And the players which are going to stay, in my opinion, are going to undergo a very important role, which is look back at these three games. Now, looking back at these three games, learning from our mistakes and being better is something very important, which we need to do in these next 2 weeks before we get back playing at home against Empoli. Looking back at things which we need to change is definitely something which will be Mourinho's priority in these days, where a lot of his players are going to be out for international games. And as we discussed yesterday, we need a formation change. We need a formation change, which hopefully will also lead to tactical changes. And I think the only logic here is moving back to four defenders. Playing with this three centre-back formation isn't helping. And I know that a lot of us agree on this point. This three-back formation isn't working out. The three defender formation is a formation which is good when our three defenders are fast defenders, and our defenders, frankly speaking, aren't the quickest. So we need formation changes, and we need to get back with four defenders. I think it's the only first step out of this dark period. I think is to go back with four defenders. Now, obviously, if we do go back to four defenders, we would need to play with two fullbacks and two centre-backs. And that would mean that one of the current centre-backs would be cut out. So in a potential list with Smalling, Mancini, Llorente and Ndika, if I only need to pick two, if Jose only needs to pick two out of these, who will they be? And that's a great question. If you ask me, the four defenders need to be Ndika and Smalling. But this will vary, obviously, depending on the tournament which we play in, because there are going to be rotations, and it also depends on the games which we're going to play. But I think moving onwards in big games, our starting defending partnership should be Smalling and Ndika. And I am going to start a poll for this because it's interesting to see what you guys think. It's interesting to see what this community thinks about shifting back to four defenders and obviously choosing who the two centre-backs would be. So I am going to start a poll for this. And yeah, feel free to obviously vote. I mean, please do vote. Which centre-back pair do you start? So obviously you've got Smalling and Mancini. You've got Smalling and Ndika. And I am going to put Ndika and Mancini. I'm leaving Llorente out because Llorente, in my opinion, is clearly the weakest. He is clearly the slowest, and I think in this first start to the season, after Smalling, I mean, all of our three defenders have been terrible, but I just feel like Mourinho would drop Llorente first, other than dropping Smalling and Mancini. So yeah. I definitely think that Llorente I'm not going to include because I think Llorente has always been a backup plan. The fact that he is starting these games, again, I've got nothing against Llorente, but I feel like Ndika's better. And even without seeing Ndika play, he is better. So I think Ndika obviously needed time to get the tactics in, to get these defensive tactics in. But now that a lot of time has gone by since preseason started, since we signed Ndika, I just feel like Llorente would be kept as a backup plan. So yeah, that's something. Again, I would like to point out something. I would like to point out that I am not Mourinho out. Like I've never said I am Mourinho out at this stage. In fact, I think if you're Mourinho out after 3 games, that is embarrassing. The only period of time where we can make such a judgment is after the 10th game week of the season. If after the 10 game week of the season we are still in relegation zone, then it can be considered. But as of now, absolutely not. Because we're 3 games into the season, this could very easily be just a false start. And after the international break, we start picking up points. So it's very early to say these things. It is very early to say these things. And I know that a lot of people have seen Roma fans go Mourinho out after these 3 games. And this is once again, another opportunity for me to say the truth. In terms of not thinking before speaking, the Roma fan base is terrible. The Roma fan base is one of the worst when it comes to not thinking before speaking, because it happens every time. This is a fan base where if Çelik scores a goal, they will start going, Çelik is the best fullback in the world. And if we lose a game, they will start putting every single component of this team under the bus. And under this aspect, our fan base is terrible at this. It is absolutely terrible. It is terrible. And sometimes, I make these mistakes as well. But it's just the DNA of this fan base. The DNA of these fans is that their opinion, they opinionate their ideas way too quick, without thinking and then without giving time. So being Mourinho out now makes no sense whatsoever. Obviously, we now have a series of games where we can't lose points. We just cannot lose points. I am going to read the games that we have after the international break, and we just can't lose points. I mean, let me get the list out. AS Roma, next games. What was it? Sorry, let me just find this list. There we go. So our next games are Empoli at home, Sheriff Tiraspol away, Torino away, Genoa away, Frosinone at home, Servette at home, Cagliari away, Monza at home, and Slavia Prague at home. Now, this is a streak of games where, I mean, the real thing is that realistically speaking, this team needs to get 4 points from this series of games. Realistically speaking, we need to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times through 27. Realistically speaking, we need to get 27 points out of the next 27. This is us realistically speaking, because we are better than every single team which I just listed. Obviously, getting 27 points out of 27 points for a team like Roma is very complicated, because we underestimate games and it's not going to happen. And the minimum we have to get from these games, this is the minimum. The minimum we need to get from these games is 21 points. That's the minimum. If we get less than 21 points from these next games, it's embarrassing, because we are better than all of these teams and we need to beat all of these teams. If after these next 9 games we don't win against Empoli, we don't win against Sheriff Tiraspol in our Europa League debut, and we lose points against, I don't know, Frosinone at home, that is when the question Mourinho out, Mourinho in can be asked. But as of now, it's nowhere close of actually being asked. Because as I just said, this could easily have been a false start, and it usually happens, especially when the teams knows each other from quite along with their manager. It's normal to have these false starts. However, this has to be a false start, and this can continue on going. Because one thing is obviously false start, and then we get hypothetical 4 points from our next 9 games, and everything's back normal. But another thing is starting very bad and continuing very bad after the international break. If the second option is the option, then something happened in the team, and then something means that it's broken down. But again, I've always said this, and I think it's one of the reasons of this. It's one of the justifications which, after seeing these first 3 games, I will give. As I've said multiple times in the last 7 minutes, this could easily have been a false start. But my fear, and this has always been a fear that I have had all the way through this summer, is basically the running out contract law. The running out contract rule. The fact that both our manager and our general director have got contracts running out at the end of this season is the biggest fear, in my opinion. Because it's the running out of contract curse, if you want to call it. Starting a season with your manager running out on a contract is terrible when it comes to motivation. It is terrible. Because the manager himself, if he knows that his contract is running out, he will obviously be less motivated. And again, this can be something which can be discussed, after our international break, seeing how we pick up after the international break. But this is something to consider. Both our general director and our manager, which after our ownership are the 2 biggest names of this team, are running out of contracts. What's the logic behind this? It's bad. It's bad to have both our leading images running out on contracts. It doesn't create a good image in the interior of your team, within the players, because the players know that the manager is going to leave at the end of the season, so obviously they are less motivated to work with him and all of that. And these are all things which we can consider after, if we see that our form just doesn't pick up. But again, these are just considerations. As I just said, we need time. We need time, and we will bounce back, because as I said yesterday, things can only get better. Things can get worse. We are 19th in the league, 1 point out of 3 games. Nothing can get worse than this. So after the international break, things can only improve. But the one thing which frustrates me, and I will say that this does frustrate me about our situation, is and I've mentioned this in the match reaction of the Milan game. What frustrates me, and I can't get over this, is how every time we lose, no single component of this team speaks. I just hate it. Because I find it disrespectful to fans. After we come from a defeat, we need to speak. I need to hear what our captain has to say. I need to hear what Celik has to say after conceding that goal. I need to hear what our manager thinks after that performance. So this thing of us not speaking after we lose, in my opinion, is bullshit. It's actual bullshit. And you probably ask yourself, why is it that we don't speak when we lose? I hope, I hope that the reason why Mourinho and the players didn't decide to speak after the Milan game, I hope this is not related to referees. And I will get to this in a second. Some of you guys might go, well, Cristante did speak. Cristante did speak, but he spoke in a press conference, which is different than speaking out in front of national TV, in front of, DAZN or Sky. It's two different things. Going live on a press conference, which fans can't see, but fans can only hear. The way facial expressions and all of that count in interviews. So Cristante did speak, but he spoke in a post-match press conference, which is different from a normal interview. I just hope that the reason why we haven't spoken after the Milan defeat isn't linked to referees, because the Rui Patricio thingy is a penalty. I don't care if you think it's a normal contact between a goalkeeper and a defender or not. That's a penalty, because our goalkeeper shouldn't dive and lift his foot as if it's flying to Mars. That's something which you can't do. And Loftus-Cheek was smart enough to put his own leg on Rui Patricio's hired foot and fall on the ground. And that's a contact, so that's a penalty. So I hope that the reason why we decided not to speak isn't linked to referees, because referees were perfect against Milan. We can't blame referees every time. And this is the problem. After that Europa League final, and after this image of us getting robbed in that Europa League final, this can't be an alibi. This can't be a justification to not speak every time we lose. Because, okay, we got robbed in that Europa League final, but the referee was great against Milan. So we can't always use this pretext and go, well, we got robbed, that wasn't a penalty, we got robbed, and in sign of protest, I'm not going to speak. Because that is a penalty, and we got to put our face on it. We got to put our face in front of national TV and go, I've been shit for 90 minutes, I'm going to improve. We can't. We just can't not speak every time we lose. And I don't think that the fact that Mourinho, Pellegrini and all of these players didn't speak is linked to the referee, because deep down I think Mourinho knows himself that that's a penalty. Maybe when you're there, first instinct, we've seen Mourinho kind of turn to the referee and go, that's not a penalty. But I'm sure Mourinho had chances to relook at that, and he knows that that's a penalty. So I don't think that's the case. But what is the case, in my opinion, of why the manager hasn't spoken after the Milan defeat, I think is linked to Budapest. What did Mourinho say after that Budapest final? After that Budapest final, Mourinho said, I can't always be the person who speaks out after we get robbed by referees. And I think him not speaking after the Milan game is linked to this. Did the Fredkins get a person to defend Mourinho in this summer window? No, they didn't. So Mourinho, who pleaded to have somebody powerful enough against him last season, with him last season to protest against these decisions, he's not been given it, and he's not happy about this. And that's I think that's the truth behind this. There has been a rumor launched by a journalist this morning that the reason why Mourinho didn't speak after the Milan game is because some players turned against him in the changing room after that Milan game. Now, I'm going to kind of throw that journalist and catch him in 4K and say that journalist is a Lazio fan. So if we, Roma fans, believe Lazio journalists when they speak about Roma, we are absolute idiots. That guy is a Lazio fan who's trying to put chaos and destabilize our environment. Not in a million years am I buying the fact that some players turned against Mourinho in the changing room after the Milan game, and in after that Mourinho didn't decide to go live. That's like writing the Hansel and Gretel fairy tale all over again, but instead of a gingerbread house, it's a chocolate house. No, it won't work because it will melt. It's ridiculous. Some of these journalists have nothing to say all day and they invent all of these things. So that is utter bullshit. The reason why he didn't go live is because, in my opinion, as I just said, they didn't get somebody powerful enough to put next to him and complain and go live and protest and make overall the squad a more powerful squad on that term. But again, it's early for all of these things. We're 3 games into the season. Yes, it's a very bad start, but let's give time, let's give faith, and we will judge strictly or not strictly enough, depending on our next 7 league games with some Europa League games into it. It's very early to give opinionated judgments after 3 games because it's just very early into the season. So everybody has got to accept that the blame needs to be shared, and I think everybody will agree on this. Players need to blame their own selves because their fitness looks terrible. They look just unfit and dead. Pinto needs to blame himself for getting injury-prone players, and the majority of them at the end of the transfer window. Dan Fredkin needs to blame himself for organising such a terrible preseason with terrible friendly games. And Mourinho also needs to blame himself because the decisions that have been characterising or starting 11s in these first 3 games of the season have been very poor. And formation changes isn't working out. So these tactics changes that Mourinho wants to happen aren't happening. So please go back to 4 defenders at the back, and we're gonna play more attacking football. Because otherwise, we will not go anywhere. Just to lighten the mood of some fans here who are saying I'm always negative. I placed a £5 today on Roma to win the Europa League. I was feeling it, and I placed it. So yeah, I am going to catch you tomorrow. If you haven't already, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments all of your opinions regarding today's topics. And yeah, let's quickly see the results of the poll, because I'm curious to see what people think if we go back to 4 defenders, what our best defending partnership would be. Smalling and Ndika says 41%, Ndika and Mancini says 33%, and 26% says Smalling and Mancini. So yeah, majority says Ndika in, and I agree. I think after the international break, we will see Ndika, and I think it's only fair to see Ndika because as of now, we've never seen him, and we might as well give him a chance to change a few things. Catch you soon, take care, enjoy your Sunday, and hopefully Juventus lose tonight. Simo, out.